Hello, my name's Cliff Fralick. I'm the Executive Director of Cinema St. Louis, and we're the presenters of the 29th Annual Whitaker St. Louis International Film Festival. We're pleased to be joined by the Director of Women in Blue, Deidre Fishel, and the person who's going to actually be conducting the Q&A is our one of our trusty Lens critics, our film blog, The Lens, Joshua Ray. I'm now going to exit and turn things over to Josh.
Thanks, Cliff, and thank you, Deidre, for coming in and talking to us about your excellent movie, Women in Blue. To start things, let's just start at the beginning. Can we talk a bit about the genesis of the project? How'd you get involved in Minneapolis PD?
Well, when I was filming my last film, I was in Staten Island. Eric Garner was choked by the police a couple of blocks away from where I was filming. And I had a friend, a woman who's a cop, but I never talked to her about policing. But I was so incensed that that could happen. It seems so crazy. And I asked her if it could ever happen on her watch. And she said, it absolutely couldn't. But it wasn't just that she said that. It was just, she was talking about how it all started at the beginning of the incident, and that she would have just come in and say, hi, my name's Sally, what's yours? We got a call, someone wants you to move. And I just started thinking, like, that's just such a human interaction. And that sort of led me into exploring this sort of question of, do women police differently? And when I found some data going back to the 90s, showing that women tend to de-escalate better, that they use less force, probably for a lot of just the way women are, gender norms and all of that stuff. I just started thinking, like, this is worth exploring given the prevalence of police violence. And I live in Brooklyn, I'm in New York. Getting to Minneapolis was just, it was a mid-sized city. They were trying to reform, and also it was one of the few major urban cities that had a woman chief. They were even rarer in 2017 when I started, and Chief Harto just gave me this really incredible access.
Yeah, can we talk a bit about that access? There's a scene where Officer White walks into a room with her employees, the police officers that she tends to or directs, and there's some reaction from the police officers of, whatever, oh shit, here she is. And I'm wondering, is some of that you and your camera crew, or was that reaction to her? And what was it like, and how did you get this access to the police department and the things that you're able to show there?
Yeah. Well, the access was a funny thing because Chief Arto had her own agenda. I mean, she knew it was an independent film, but she really loved the idea of someone elevating the voices of women officers. So she kind of said she got almost every policewoman in the department into a room for me. And they had like never been together. So that was a whole thing for them because they were sort of marginalized in different parts of the department. And she allowed me to, kind of tell people what I was looking for. And then anyone who agreed I could have total access following that. So I was given this like really incredible access. And then 3 months after I started, she was forced to resign. So from that moment on, I lived until we finished the film in dreaded fear that that access was going to be taken away. And, it never was. And I finally kind of, it was very hard to reach Chief Rondo. And there was like this international incident. I couldn't reach him through his information officers, but I just kind of kept showing up. And then I realized he knew I was there. And then I said, kind of, I'm shooting. And he kind of said yes. But I heard from the women a lot that a lot of the men were very angry that we were, that I was there, and they really didn't want me to be there. So but we just kind of kept showing up. And, it's hard to pick apart, like, because the truth is there is a camera and there is a crew, and that always affects, so were they particularly uncomfortable because we were there filming with a crew? I mean, maybe, but I feel like people when they get nervous, they just kind of act more like themselves, you know, and people did things all the time that I was really surprised they would do in front of a camera, but I think they thought that was fine. You know, I think that they were okay with that. And, you know, Sergeant White never said, oh, you know, they were acting really weird. It seemed part and parcel of what she had to deal with.
Yeah, she actually says the opposite in that this is how they behave, and I let them slide with, their sexual frank talk and some of the things that they say to me because I have to be on their level. Um, One thing I am wondering, you brought up Chief Rondo, and you set out to make a film about women police officers. And after Chief Harto resigns and Rondo comes in, there seems to be a shift away from Harto's progressiveness and promotion of women in the department. Um, how did that kind of change your film? And I'm wondering if you're seeing the same. I saw a parallel because it's around the same time that 2016 happened, and certainly a lot of progressive rollback is happening in the country. And did you see those parallels? Because it's kind of telling the story of a rise against progressivism in the country.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so complicated, and I mean, Chief Arto was unusual in being very clear about wanting these, you know, very progressive initiatives. And she was very bold about a lot of stuff. So a lot of, you know, she was not always well liked. The union president hated her. I don't know that Chief Rondo is, I think, on the spectrum of probably police officers in the country. I think, you know, he faced his own harassment. He's very connected to the Black community, but he definitely did not see the he didn't he didn't prioritize women anymore. You know, he prioritized something different. And I do believe that also, that he was trying to kind of win back the rank and file, and that's always a very complicated thing. And when you win back the rank and file, you know, it also means sort of accepting a certain, you know, recently there was an incident in Minneapolis where somebody said, you know, it's just a bunch of white boys. And that person was demoted. And so I thought, wow, you're really, you know, and all these white officers got really, really upset. And I thought, God, it's 2020. Like, you're so upset to be called white boys. And now this chief is turning, you know, going to demote. It was a black, a black officer who said that. So yeah, I mean, I never want to elevate women and then bring down, you know, a black chief, because it was a really big deal for the Minneapolis community. For 150 years, they had never had a black chief, and I think it was really, really meaningful for a lot of people in the community. But yeah, I don't think that he was willing to go against the rank and file at the level that she was. And I think that things slipped back like a rubber band. It was just crazy. It was just like back to business as usual. All of these kinds of the progress that had been made for women in the department really slid back.
Yeah, it is wild to see that kind of immediate snap that happens whenever Rondo comes in. But um, I'm wondering, you get right in the action too. I mean, a lot of the film is, in the offices and kind of the bureaucracy that you're talking about, and this person's in this position, but like Melissa gets moved and has like 3 days notice that she's got to go to internal affairs, and tries to even elevate that position. But you're also in the streets and in the cars with these people. Can you talk about what that's like?
Yeah. I mean, it's It's definitely an eye opener. I mean, you're kind of chatting. Like there'll be these sort of down times, and you're kind of just chatting with them or joking, and then suddenly there's a call, and you're flying through the night, and you actually really don't know where you're going. And I think that really gave me an empathy a little bit for police officers, not to condone the police brutality and all the ways in which police officers cross the line in this country, particularly towards people of color. But it is scary. And I think that if we're going to acknowledge the full picture of policing and sort of how to transform public safety, I think we have to acknowledge that, like, there's a lot of guns on the street. There's a lot of guns, and now more than ever, right? Like everyone's arming up. And to be a person flying through the street to something that could be, there could be, and often are guns on the scene. It is scary. And I think that's important to acknowledge when thinking about all the things about how to train people, how to do it differently. And I think we got to get some of those guns. We need a little gun control. That there's a lot of things that I think police, there's a lot of reform or transformation or system change that police departments need, but there's a lot of other things that need to be fixed too, like gun control, and like a criminal justice system that's really, uh, you know, creating the laws that allow people to arrest people when they really actually need help.
right? And you've got access also to mayoral candidates. There's that wonderful debate that you show, and the mayoral candidate who, prods the future mayor and saying, "You want to give them more money?" How did you get that balance? Because it could be that you're making a movie about women in blue. It could be that you never show this kind of opposition. Of course, circumstances in Minneapolis throughout your filming would dictate that you would need to. But how did you find the balance of showing being with the police, but also showing the opposition?
We spent a lot of time in the editing room, a lot of time,
I bet.
but it was hard. It was like a hard balance, because also, like, my whole impetus to make the film, it wasn't making it look, I think every industry should have, a diverse group of people. It should have women, it should have men, it should have gay people, straight. I mean, I believe in that, but that's not why I was making this film. I wasn't making it because I thought there should be more women, just because like every industry should have women. I thought, because, like, let's ask this question of, could women help change the level of violence that police perpetrate? So right away, that kind of makes you want to look at the community and what's going on. But I also think I came in with one idea, that the film would be primarily about gender. And really quickly, like within 8 weeks, or, certainly by the time Chief Arto was forced to resign, I was like, that's not possible with policing. You have to make a film that's about gender and race and violence. And so that really, made it clear to me. And also because I myself, while I actually, I was feeling close to a lot of these women, I respected them. The police shootings that were, police killings that were rolling out on our watch, I was really appalled at. So I really agreed with the community, and I wanted to show that. So yeah, I mean, the outrage was there. I mean, that's the crazy thing. It's just, there were so many incidents in Minneapolis. It's not a shock that that would be the place where George Floyd would be murdered. And it's not a shock that people would go crazy, because, how long can you cry out for justice before you're just like, something has to be done here. We have to take to the streets.
Yeah, and everyone followed suit around the
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
And so you're right there in the center of it, filming, making a movie you've been working on for years. And I'm wondering once that happened with George Floyd and he was murdered, how does that change everything? Because you had to have been at a point where you said, well, I'm almost done with this documentary, right?
Yeah.
This
Well,
is only a few months ago.
I was done. So we were going to premiere at Tribeca. It never happened because they canceled it. And then we were at our first virtual film festival, which was Minneapolis. So we went to our homes, it
Mm.
had a screening, and 36 hours later, George Floyd was murdered. So the film was already, set for broadcast and was going to festivals. And so, like for me, that was a real reckoning because I thought, does the world need this film? Like, it's so, if that could happen, what does that mean about police reform? And, are women really the point here, or is it just this whole corrupt system? And so it really was a very difficult moment as a filmmaker. And then I just was like, you know what? This is the story. This is the police department. This is where it happened. And these characters need to reckon with it, or the film is sort of like outdated before it's even come out. And that's when I went back to, bring that event, that murder and the aftermath, and bring characters in to reckon with it, and to start the film with that, because that's where we all are, that's what we all know. So I wanted people to know, like, we know we're here now, and now I want you to look back at what was happening in the 3 years preceding that murder.
Yeah, it really does. It paints the narrative of how something like that can occur and well keep on occurring because you're there while Tamar Clark is gunned down and Justine Dimon uh, has the same fate, and then of course the wild thing that happens with both of those subsequent cases and that settlement that they give the white woman, what is it, 100 times more than the family, the Clarks?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
200,000 to
200,000 to
20 million. Yeah. Yeah.
20 million. Yeah, it is really wild that you were there and able to do all this. How has the experience changed your own view of the police, Minneapolis police, or police in
Yeah.
general?
Well, what I feel like is that it's very, very complicated. And I hope that the film helps people kind of see some of the layers and complexity, not to make it so that when people go in to think about change, that they're kind of looking at all the pieces. And I guess I'm very different than a lot of my progressive friends in that I really do believe that there are some people in the police department um, who we need and who we should be elevating, whether we change it, whether it's not called policing, whether it's a different system. I think unless it's going to take a long time. Like we've been like disinvesting from communities. We have a history of slavery and, systemic racism. We have gun violence, poverty. I mean, we have, as we see now, there's a huge upsurge in violence. And so I see it as but the fix is complicated. But I do feel like, could we have a system that supports the Sergeant Whites of the world? And it's not easy to be in there. And I feel grateful that she is. So, I know a lot of people who literally, like, they think cop, they think asshole, they think cop, they think white supremacist, they think man. And I sort of think like, well, there's a lot of truth to that, but there's also these amazing individuals who are inside that system trying to, actually, for her, one call at a time. She's from this community. She sees the trauma. And so, I really believe that not only do we need women, but I've really come to see that we need Black women from the community there to change it from law enforcement, which I hate that word because it's got force in it, to how do we help communities and how do we help take care of them? And I just think that's such a different mindset.
What sort of reactions have you gotten from audience members? I know, I saw that this was coming. I had read about it actually before it was selected for SLIF, and I'm one of those people who are like, cop, no. So you go in and watch it, but you really do paint a complicated picture that helps to really spurn some thinking on the viewer's part. What kind of reactions are you getting from the film?
Yeah, it's a teeny bit hard to gauge in the same way that you can when you're going to festivals. I have to say, it's like I would love to be in St. Louis, and I would love to, be going, with the film and seeing it with audiences and really like in conversation. So I miss that a lot. But I think, we had one person who was really quite harsh with the film, and when it was, it's like George Floyd dies, the person is murdered, and like someone sees it like the next day, and sort of like the film is like back. The film isn't quite up to date, and it's not really dealing with George Floyd. And I actually really used that to my advantage, because I thought, okay, what do the film need to reckon with? So I haven't had, maybe I'm not getting it, but with this version, I have it. People, I think, do feel that way from what I'm hearing, that there's some complexity there. And I don't think, what I hope is that like having a complicated discussion doesn't condone police violence or brutality, that we can have a discussion, a complex discussion, and still like be in the same, vantage point of, certain things that happen are completely unacceptable. I just think that knowing, it's not always the chiefs, it's often the union. I mean, I think the union is a real culprit in this equation. And how can we actually have change if you have a union that can, like, chief fires somebody? You don't fire somebody easily in a police department. It's not, so they get fired and they're back on the job. That happens all the time. So yeah, I think there's a lot of hard discussions, and hopefully we'll have them moving forward with a different president, so that we can dig deeper and think as a country about how to begin to heal and change and transform systems that aren't working, and think about who do we want in those systems to be our, to be leading it. And I think it's got to be a completely different, and I don't think it's just women. I think it's like women as a concept, because it's a lot how people have been raised, and gender norms. And, I think a certain kind of man of conscience might actually want to be in a police department that had a lot more women, that would be people who had that same approach of care, men and women.
Well, it certainly is a complex issue and complex film, and I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of it. And I really want to thank you for the work that you did here.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And I hope everyone's enjoying SLIFT right now. And maybe they'll get some reactions to you from St. Louis. So.
Okay, I hope so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deidre.
Thank you.